So if we break this down, this is kind of my thesis here. We will succeed at AI-informed learning if the learners are using it to think, retrieve, interact, and receive feedback more than they could alone. The trap is the tool, yeah, the shiny thing. Yeah, wow, look at this amazing thing it's made. That's the trap. We have to use that to put the student in a position where it creates thinking, it creates a provocation, it creates some response. I'm going to share a bunch of different activities later. We're still sort of high up on the wave here, looking at the theory, but this is my thesis here. The learning will fail when the AI is thinking for the students. And if we can use it to get more retrieval from the student, to interact, to draw more on them, then that's where we want to be. This is kind of my image of this. So I don't know if you've seen The Matrix, but The Matrix, for those who don't know, Neo is a human, and he's in this computer program called The Matrix. And in this, which is a scene from the second film, there's all of these different agents. So those are the guys in the background flying around with the sunglasses. They all look the same. But here, this is the image I keep coming back to, because the student, the human, is right in the center. They are exerting themselves. They are doing things that they wouldn't ordinarily do if the agents weren't there, and they're operating at a very high level of effort or engagement. So this to me is a picture I keep coming back to. It's a reminder to me to centralize the student in all of this stuff and to not get distracted by the agents or the beauty of the output, or how great the AI is at thinking. I don't care. Does it help my students think? Does it help them learn? We've got to keep focused on that. So we know that there's a lot of opportunities out here. We've got unlimited practice with feedback. That's possible. We can have dialogue on demand. We can have conversation tutors. Possible. We've got patient explanation pitched to the learner's exact level. That is possible now. We can simulate professional encounters with clients, therapeutic patients, engineering challenges. We've got a partner for all these generative strategies. We can get the students to explain themselves. They can teach the AI as a novice. The AI can be the novice and the student can teach it, and the AI can ask them stupid questions. All of these are possible now. So the question is, how do we do that while avoiding the risks? And the risks are that we bypass the cognition that drives the learning. We've got terms like cognitive offloading, great performance, poor learning. It's actually corrosive. The metacognitive illusions, this false fluency, which is very seductive and difficult to spot because we can't detect it. We have to get closer to understanding of the process that the student is going through, or put them in conditions where they can't access the AI, Vivas, having conversation with them, or analyzing process portfolios and so on and so forth. So that to me is where we stand. If we break this down to possible principles, here is my stab at some of these, each of which has a theory sort of underpinning it. All of this is basically just a summary of some of the things that I've mentioned before. We want there to be effort. Yeah, we want it to be hard, and the core use case of AI is it makes this hard thing simple. Yeah, we can use that, but we have to use it carefully. So no surprise here, I think, that these are the principles that I am working towards. If we are designing without AI, then I think that's a very positive choice, because I think, to me, education is a fundamentally human process. It's got to be kept resolutely human, and I think we've got to use these. This is why I think of AI as a context rather than an agent. To me, it's an environment. It's an environment within which the student now sits, which, if it's designed well, gives them more opportunities to think more effectively. It guides their thinking, it informs their thinking, it's material for their thinking. So that's I think how I like to conceive of it. You can, as I say, that's just a view. So I'm very happy to discuss that a little later. You may have a different view, which is great. I think we do need a range of views on this because it's so new and it's coming at us fast. But I also think we have to establish our position as a sector now, because otherwise it will be dictated to us by these big tech companies who say this is how you learn it. No, We know the learning science. That's us. Yeah, that's our. We are closer to the students than they are. So I think we have to make these good design choices now, so that we can show these good use cases, and that in turn tips it in good directions. So designing with AI, we've got some views in from the Australians now. The Aussies are a little bit further ahead with the AI, I think. Um, they've got some great stuff going on over there. So we've got some of the thinkers over there, like Danny Liu, for example, with this two-lane assessment spectrum, where you've got some bits where you want to get close to the student and to find out what they're doing, and others it's a little bit freer, where it's open to them to use AI, because using AI well is an assessed skill. So they're breaking this down and separating out the curriculum, and also approaching it from a program level as well, which is quite interesting. There's a great assessment scale by Perkins and Rowe, which I've actually added to the Padlet, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, because I'm getting way too theoretical now. It's like, come on, land on something. So we'll be showing that in a second, but have a look at the AI assessment scale, which I've linked to in my Padlet, which I'll share in a moment. And that's a usable tool to communicate to students where you would like them to use it and where they absolutely shouldn't. And often if you explain the rationale to them, students seem to be quite receptive to that. Obviously there are challenges, but the transparency, I think, is useful. The classroom is where thinking is visible. There's frameworks that we've developed over decades in our industry: think, write, share, thinking aloud, writing in the room, and so on, that we can draw on within the classroom. So we have ways to get that thinking to be very visible when we see them in front of us. But a big challenge is what happens outside of the classroom with the students' AI use. Okay, let's start moving into something a little more concrete now. So I'm going to start waving down. Taking all of those different ideas, what are some of the things that we might make? So if we think of AI not as the core, not as the center, but as this thinking environment, a place in which the student is encouraged or equipped to think more, retrieve more, receive more feedback, and so on, then we've got a few different directions that we can go in. And here's a couple of them on your screen here. What you'll notice here is the positioning of the AI, and it's around the student. It's setting things up for the student to do the core thinking. And I've got some examples of these. I've got a full set of activities and prompts for these if you want to. Once I keep bigging up this Padlet. You like, shows the Padlet there. There's a lot of things for you to have a look at on there, but all of these are about putting the student in a position where they are thinking rather than just getting the AI to do it. Remember that all of these as well are things that the students can do for each other as well. So a lot of the activities that I'll share here, it's possible to translate these into activities that students then do for themselves. They can make an artifact for themselves that they then share with another student, and then they have a discussion about that. I think the AI literacy conversation is also moving on from just beyond literacy to being able to use it for professional purposes. So being able to develop something valuable, to be able to build with it, to be able to communicate with it well with it, and so on and so forth. So I think sometimes it's quite useful to think about those as valuable skills for students as well, that they'd be able to take away with them. All right, let's get to practice. I'm going to share the Padlet with you here. So I've given you the theory behind this and the approach to them. Yes, and I've got some good AI frameworks in the in the Padlet. I will. So before we dive into to that. Have a look at that. Have that open on the screen, and I'm going to share it with you and talk you through it in a moment. There's loads on there. There's loads. You could probably sit with that for a whole day, but I'm going to talk you through the different aspects of that in a moment. So Anthropic, which is one of the big AI companies, they make Claude. They did a study of 77,000 chats from educators, and that's a good that's a good indicator that all of your data when you're using these tools is going somewhere. It's being kept, it's being analyzed and broken down. So that's a sort of side point here. What they did was they looked at that and they asked themselves, what are the different categories that educators are using the AI? And they broke it into three, and those three are here. So level one is where you're putting text in, you're getting text out. Give me a summary of this article. I'm doing a workshop on this. Write me a plan. And so it's text in, text out. That's the sort of level one use, which I think all of us are familiar with. Level two is the production of learning artifacts, which could be something like an HTML file. So HTML is just the code that a browser uses. It looks like a website, or it's got a branching scenario. So you've got this. Would you like option A, B, or C? You click on A, boom, an A appears. So it's more interactive. It's like a website. It can use simulations or role plays. It can you can choose your answers, and then it gives you a very sort of deterministic answer that's been pre-programmed. So that's the sort of level two. Level three is the direct student to AI engagement. So the student using it as a tutor or as a study buddy, using it as a Socratic opponent. So the AI is asking them questions. Why did you choose this? Let's have a look at your work. Talk me through why you did this part. What about this? What about that? So it's very much the direct student to the AI level. That's harder. That's harder to do. But I think it's useful to separate these three because they get conflated. When we think about AI use for learning design, these three things have very different considerations. Actually, they're very different skill sets, and they're also they differ in terms of how much data you need, the way in which how much data you're collecting from the student, how you're using that, and the way in which you are expecting the student to do it. Here's something on making these artifacts, and then I'm going to talk through the Padlet. So level one is text in, text out. Make me a workshop. Give me a plan of this. Get me a summary essay. The basic one is you prompt it and then you get the text output. To do that more effectively, you want to be more specific with your context. You give it an example of what good looks like. Here's one I made earlier, basically like Blue Peter style. Another strategy I've found is you take the output, you take it from Claude, and then you stick it in ChatGPT. What do you think of this? How could you improve this? Because they're wildly different now, these AIs, wildly different. ChatGPT launched a new model just, I think it was about 3 days ago, Thursday or something, which is a step up from what they've done before. It's very different from Claude's high-end Fable. They have different training data. They'll look at things in different ways. So you'll get some useful stuff out of that. You might want to consider outputting it to a project. So ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they have project areas where you can put an example in there. And then when you do it again, it can just create similar versions. So it saves you having to do that work of giving it what good looks like and so on and so forth. Also, what I've done these days is I prompt with my voice now. So there are certain tools out there where you can just speak to it. I've worked out that it's 4 times faster for me to do that than to try and type. And also they're so good now that it doesn't matter how garbled and nonsensical your spoken text is, it will work it out and it will figure it out. And it's amazing at just sort of understanding your intention. That's where we are now. A year ago, we had to have, the first thing you do to is give it a role. And then the second thing is you don't need any of that. You just don't need it. Just go in there, prompt it with your voice, and then ask it to help you refine the prompt as well. How do I improve this prompt? And then it will give you the ideas. It's bananas. Level 2, learning artifacts, is where you make these HTML files. Be clear on the plan. You ask it to write the full prompt. If you want that, you can just get it to make an offline file, code an HTML file, and then it becomes shareable. It's offline, and then you just iterate and refine it. If you want to do something more advanced,